Welcome back to Ignition Core Studio. Today we're going to be learning about primers, what kind of primers to use, as well as basing, how to paint different bases to reflect different types of terrain, and how to apply static grass. Okay, so first off we're going to talk about primers. Priming your minis is an essential thing to do. All right. First off, we're going to take the model that we had last time, this guy right here, and you notice, all the sand is dry, as well as all the rocks are attached. Now, I was actually going to reference a comment that was made in the last video, and somebody was asking me whether it was better to put the basing on after priming. And the thing is that you actually want to prime after you put the sand on. And the reason why is that locks everything in. And I have an example of that right here. So this base was made exactly the same way that I did with the last one, but as you can see, all the primer has locked in all the little bits of gravel and everything like that. So it actually just makes it look just like the Mini. Okay. I have a couple bases here that we're going to go over, and I'll explain how each one of these was made and what we're going to be doing with this. All right. Some of these, like this one right here, was actually 3D printed. I have a couple resin printers that I use, and I've printed out several different types of bases, like for instance this one. This one has already been done up and painted, and I'll show you exactly how to do the grass just like this in this video. Okay, and then I have another one right here. Now this was actually a model that some bases that I ordered, and I will put the company in the description below once I can remember it. But we're actually going to be doing a couple different ones. One of them is going to be lava. This is going to be a lava base. This is going to be your typical earth type terrain. With this we'll have the static grass. This will be more of an icy type of Valhalla type terrain. And then this one will be like a desert. So we're going to kind of cover all of our bases. All right. But before we do that, let's talk about primers. Okay. I actually primed all of those with the Rust-Oleum ×2 Ultra Cover Primer. They come in, I believe, white and gray. I'm not sure if they come in black. I just don't remember if they do or not. The white can be very temperamental. Especially when it's hot out. If you live where I live, you never really want to prime when it's hot. You always want to prime when it's like a decent degree outside or at nighttime, and it makes it a little bit easier. Otherwise you'll get a lot of almost like powdery type effect to it. Then you have Citadel Chaos Black. They also have the new contrast paints, being Wraithbone and Grayseer, I believe. Those are really good for contrast paints because it's a very smooth effect afterwards. Chaos Black, I mean, everybody's got to have this on hand. Just have a black spray paint. That's pretty good. Another one that's actually pretty good too is Army Painter. Army Painter comes in different, they have different colors, like this one's a purple. And the neat thing about these is if you, for instance, have green skin, Army Painter green skin, this is 100% matched to the color primer. So if you find a spray can that is green skin, it's going to be the exact same color as this. So you really can use it for like touch-ups and things like that. Okay? So that's for the spray can or the rattle can type spray paint. Now, the Citadel type of primer will be really good. I mean, this is, for instance, the Citadel primer. It does a really good job of covering. Now, if you're painting black armor, for instance, like Raven Guard type Space Marines, one of the things that you're going to want to do is take abandoned black paint like this, and actually go over and actually paint the entire model in black after you primed it, because it has a different finish and it's a much deeper black than just the base coat of the primer. Okay, so with that noted, we're going to move on to airbrush primers now. Now, I actually use a lot of Vallejo type surface primer. You can also use Steinolrenz type, but here is a couple of the surface primers that I use. They have black, white, gray. I'm actually going to be getting glossy black here soon. I'm going to be using that for the Necrons for the Indomitus box set that's coming out soon. Then you also have things like this one, which is General Dark Yellow, German Dark Yellow, I should say. This is actually really good for like deserts as a basing, and then you can actually work off of that. Okay. When you're working with these type of primers, excuse me, it's best to use also with a little bit of airbrush thinner. Now, when you are mixing these up, you only want to do like 1 to 2 drops depending on how much you're using, and you always want to mix in, let's say I'm just going to use this, let's say you're using a small little container. All right, when you pour in your surface primer, just pour in a little bit. You don't need to do a whole lot, because a little bit of this goes a long way. Then you'll want to dip in 1 to 2 drops of airbrush thinner, give it a good mix before pouring it into your airbrush area right there. Okay, don't want to just pour it inside your airbrush and mix it inside there, because a lot of times that's how you can clog your airbrush. Okay, but we'll go over airbrushing in a later video. I'm just kind of giving you an overall thing to expect with these type of primers. Okay, so that concludes the primer overview. Now onto the fun part. Let's do some painting. Okay, so for the first one, we're going to go with the basic like Terran style earth. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some Citadel Rhinox hide, Mornfang brown, we're going to take some Doom brown, and actually, you know what, we're going to switch this up for Morghast bone. Okay. And then we're also going to use a little bit of Celestia Gray base. And of course, Nuln Oil. Alright, so how you're going to do this is you, first off, for a base like this, since there's no mini on there, I can actually be a little bit more carefree. And you get a little tiny bit of the Rhinox hide. And you're going to just put a little bit of water. I'm doing this a little bit off camera because my painting little palette thing I have is just off camera here. Let me know if you guys want to see like a webcam setup of the painting palette and see how I mix and all that stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it straight onto the model. Sorry, I'm just trying to get some paint here. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to take some brown here. I'm just not, you don't have to be like super neat with this at all, because we're going to just end up cleaning. This is literally just a base coat. This is just the first coat of mini. Don't have to worry about the sides because we'll be doing a trim on the side to clean it up. I even get over the rocks. Ooh, looks like that's not fully dry. That's fine, we'll just be careful around it. Okay, so got it fully based in brown. The Rhinox hide brown. You can kind of blow on the models to kind of speed the process of it drying. That helps quite a bit. So we're actually going to put that off to the side. So this is going to be the Terran. And while that's drying, we're going to start basing the other one. So for this one, we're going to go with Gunthor Brown. All right, and this is going to be the desert. So we're just going to get a little bit of paint out of here. Now, you're going to notice I'm not going to do the same thing that I did with the last one because I have some tiles here. We're going to be doing that a different color. So I'm actually going to, again, you don't have to be super neat about it, but just kind of take into consideration. I'm going to leave the rock and the skull alone. Coming through, just like so. I always like painting bases. You can come up with some really, really neat ideas and exactly how you want to, make it come out. And it's always fun to explore and try new things, and especially if you want to come up with kind of wacky ideas and alien planets and stuff. And that was all right. Okay, so while that's drying, we're going to go on to, let's do the lava. All right, so with lava bases, I don't know if you can see this, but it's very smooth right here, and it's actually kind of coming up onto the sides, right? This is just cork. All I did was glue cork on here, and then I took extra thick glue, like wood glue, and I just put a lot of wood glue all on here and kind of let it form up into like almost like pools and stuff, so that way it doesn't have the base texture of a regular base. I don't know if you can see it in there in the light, but that will come up if you were to just paint it. It just doesn't look great, especially when you're trying to do lava. So as you can see, the smoothness plus the actual almost like liquid congealment there is actually going to really lend itself to the effect. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use, first color is Mephiston Red, then we're going to use Troll Slayer Orange and Uriel Yellow. All right, now this one's kind of a interesting technique to do, because for the other techniques you kind of want to wait for everything to dry. With this one, you actually want to work with it when it's still rather wet. Now, this is not wet blending. This is just a technique that I like to use. All right, so I'm using Mephiston Red, and first and foremost, I'm just going to give a good little coat of Mephiston Red right inside of here. Now, you can actually do this effect with airbrush much easier and better, but I'll be going over airbrushing in later episodes once I get my my new airbrush in. I'm getting a Badger Sotar 2020. Go figure, for the year, right? Okay, so while that is slightly drying and it's still wet, what we're going to do is we're going to take some Troll Slayer Orange, and we're just going to start kind of dotting it in here. You don't have to really blend it, but you want to make sure that it's still wet and it's slightly mixing, but still keeping its color. I don't know if you can see that. You actually you don't want it uniform. You want it to be breaking up and leaving almost like miniature puddles. The effect's going to look really cool once it's all done. Okay. Now you notice, you can see the orange is kind of starting to blend into the red right there, but you can still see the red on the edges. You want the red to remain on the edges, and you want the brightest points to be in the center. So moving on, we're going to get some yellow. Make sure you thoroughly wash out your brush between each color, so that way you don't contaminate the next color that you're about to get paint out of. I know it seems kind of common sense, but even sometimes I forget. Okay, so with this color, I'm just going to get a little bit. Now, if you notice, my brush is not exactly a detailed brush. This is just kind of a throwaway brush, right? I'm going to use my thumb as almost like a mini palette, and I'm going to draw almost like a little stream, kind of blending it in to the orange in certain spots and around the edges. Okay. Now it doesn't have to be completely blended in. Don't worry, it gets better after this. Now with this, there's two ways you can go about doing this. You can put a gloss sheen onto it, so like a gloss varnish, to keep it like just like that, so it's got like that shiny kind of wet look to it. Or you can do an additional step that I like to do that makes it look pretty cool, and that is you're going to want to get some black, some Abaddon black. Now this, you may need to have a more fine detail paint brush. Okay, I'm going to use the back end of my paintbrush to get a good amount of paint out. I'm going to put on my little painting palette that I have set up down here. You're going to want to do a drop of water, literally just like a drop, and usually one drop to one drop of paint is a good mix. Okay. Now what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to take the fine tip paintbrush. I'm going to bring this up so you can actually see exactly what I'm doing here. Now I'm going to paint irregular patterns of black onto the surface here. You're going to be like, wait, why are you covering up all that, the paint that we just did? Well, most of it's actually going to get covered up, but what we want to do is we want to leave a space in between these different chunks that we are painting. So if you look at lava, you'll see actual chunks of like cooled lava on the top that floats on top. For you salamander fans out there, this is a cool idea for some salamander bases. Just like that. I'm trying to keep a little bit of space in between. I mean, you can make them as big or as small as you want. I'm just kind of going for speed here. It's okay if you have large patches of it too. Now, you see how it's kind of mixing there? That's actually something that you don't want. So, wait till it's dry, and then just kind of go back over. If you're going to do this, you want to make sure it's nice and solid. Now you can spend hours on here, just painting, really intricate patterns and all that, but you can go something like that. Sorry, try to keep that on the camera. And that's a really cool effect, especially when it's on the table. It just looks like lava flow. And then you can just do a quick dry brush with Celestial Gray. I'll grab an actual dry brush I have here. There we go. So get yourself a dry brush. Get a little bit of gray paint on there. I'm going to wipe off most of it. Here's a cool little trick you can do, again, using your finger. You just you can brush onto your finger and you can see exactly how much is coming off. If it looks like it's barely coming off, that's perfect. And then come over here to just do a quick dry brush with that gray on top of the gray primer. And if you're looking for speed and you're just looking to get something out, this is actually really good. Okay, boom, done. Now you can paint the edge black and just kind of make it from there, and you got some lava bases. All right, so going on back over here, we're going back to the earth tiles. Now it's actually had some time to dry. The rest of the time it's just going to be dry brushing pretty much. We're going to go with some Mornfang brown. Again, going to do a little bit of dry brushing here. And you don't want to press too hard. You just want to just lightly drag it across, and all the little pieces of grit and dirt and stuff that was locked in is going to catch up on. It's going to pick up that color. Now, the more passes that you do, the more stark the color is going to become. So just kind of figure out exactly how you want it to look. But I don't know if you can see in the light. Starting to see it. Now, to make this a little bit more pronounced, this is something, a little trick I learned. Keeping that paint, that dry brush paint, the brown, on your brush, and you get a little bit of Morangas bone. Just dip the tip, just like that. You don't need much. Again, now you're going to want to rub it, most of this off again, but it's going to kind of blend in with that brown. So when you go back over, it's going to be even more. It's going to be even lighter. Here, there. Now the rocks are not going to stay this color. I'm just kind of going over them to give you an idea. Okay, just like that. Now we're going to go move on to the rocks. For the rocks, I'm going to use we're going to use Dark Reaper first. And we're going to paint these rocks. All right, we're going to paint them to make them kind of look like slate. You may need to do like 2 coats or 1 coat depending on your preference for how dark you want the stones. I'm not going too dark. I just want to get the basic color in there. You do kind of want to make sure that you are at least paying attention to what you're doing, so that way you don't have to do retouch-ups and things like that. Okay, boom, there we go. Now, of course, those are very dark looking stones. So now we're going to go back through with Celestial Gray. And we're going to do a technique called overbrushing. Overbrushing is essentially, think of it as like a wet dry brush. So where dry brushing was like dry, essentially dry paint that you're just kind of getting onto the model, you actually kind of want your brush slightly wet. And it's okay if the stones are slightly wet as well, because it's going to blend in. I'm just going to bring it over the top of the rocks, like so. I'll bring it up like this. Just catch the edges. That's all you need to do. You can actually leave the dark that's in here in the corners. You can leave that alone and just kind of build up. And you're kind of wet blending. This is essentially what it is. Okay. And then you can bring out a little bit of white. Again, I use my thumb as a little palette. It mix a little bit in with that gray to really make it a really light gray and not just a stark white. Now I'm just going to kind of go over the edges of the rock. Okay, just like that. And this really kind of mimics the look of slate, which is really cool for basing. I actually have slate that I ordered off of Amazon. Unfortunately, they came in pretty big rock sizes, so I have to actually go outside and break them down to use them. Alright, so you got some rocks, and they look really cool, especially with that dirt. Now, we're going to go a step further. Whereas this looks pretty good on its own, we can actually add a little bit more color to it and really make it pop by adding grass. Now this is static grass. There's different types. You can get like dead grass. This is like a spring kind of grass here. You can usually find them at hobby stores as well as model train stores and things. There's just all sorts of type. I believe Army Painter and GW sell little bits of grass that are on glue. So what you gotta do is just peel it off and you put it right on the base. That's fine. You can use that as well. I like to use this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna get a little bit of grass here. I'm gonna get a pair of tweezers, like so. I'm gonna get my Gorilla Glue. I'm going to pour just a little tiny bit of glue out. We're going to use my my bad brush here. Now, this is really easy. You just take a little bit of glue on your brush, and I'm just going to place it in a little bit of areas like this. You don't need to cover the entire base. I mean, you can if you want to, but I find just a little bit does the job. There you go. I try to aim for like 3 to 4 dots of glue on there. Now, especially when wood glue is this, I don't want to say thin, but there's not a whole lot of amount there, it's going to dry pretty quickly. So using tweezers, trust me, you want to use tweezers. You don't want to use your fingers. You use your fingers, you're going to get static grass all over you. I'm just going to take a small little clump and I'm just going to touch it to each dot of glue, like so. I'm going to tip most of it back in, give it a good couple taps. Now here's the important part. Put it away from you and you're going to give it a good blow onto it. And it's going to get all that extra grass that's off, and it's going to kick all of the grass edges up. So it's going to look like this. Now the white from the glue is going to disappear. It's going to become clear, but you're going to have a really good basing for your models. This is like kind of a traditional way of doing basing for models. Okay, so that base is done, and we're going to go off onto the rest of the desert one real quick. This one again is going to be pretty easy, so we'll get right through it. Let's see. Go back to the bad brush. The wood glue actually rinses off pretty quickly, which is good. So after we had used Gonthar Brown, we're now going to use Army Painter's Desert Yellow. I believe they actually have a spray in this because it's the 100% match. So you could actually just spray the entire thing like this and you got a pretty good step already done. But I will show you what I do here, just kind of give it extra depth. This is kind of an overbrush. It's definitely a dark mustard yellow. And it's a kind of it's a rather thick paint. I'm not pressing hard, I'm just letting the edges pick up all the detail from that. Sorry for the the hiccups. Had a little too much soda earlier, I guess. All right, there we go. Get a nice little even spread onto that. You can see that there. I'm going to take a color called Brain Matter Beige by War Paints, Army Painter. This is a very, very light color. It's almost like a off-white. And what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to do a dry brush. I'm going to get most of that paint off. Make sure when you're using Army Painter paints that you give them a really, really good shake. Because you're going to need it. All right, so with this, I'm just kind of going in one direction to really pick out all of those sand dune pieces. Okay, there we go. Just like that. Cool. Now, I like having my sand a little bit more defined, have a little bit more richer color to it. So one of the things I do is I take Seraphim Sepia. And what I do is I hit the base up with a bit of wash. Now this is going to go into all those little cracks and crevices, and it's going to essentially tie a lot of those colors together. And where you use that beige color, it's going to, well, it's going to darken it just a little bit, but it's going to really kind of pick up the sepia taint from the wash, and it really gives a nice rich color. Just like that. Now if you have dead grass, you can put bits of dead grass like next to the rock and things like that on the desert to really make it look nice. Even a little bit of green. If you do a little tiny bit of green grass around the edges and then like a big tuft of like a yellowish grass on there, that will make it tie in really, really well. All right. Now of course washes take just a little bit longer to dry than regular paints, but you can already tell by the color that it's been tinted. It looks a lot nicer. All right, so that's gonna do it for now. I'm actually at my time. So again, this is gonna be the second video in this series, and we'll be going on from there. So thanks guys. Enjoy painting, and I'll see you next time.